Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and you are listening to the Networking RX podcast. Today, I have a guest on. As many of you know who have listened in the past, I have guests on from time to time. There'll be episodes where I will just be sharing my ideas and insights on networking, and from time to time, I'll have a guest. Today, I have a return visitor, Michael Rogers, and he's an author. I'll get into his background. He was on earlier. I interviewed him a couple months ago regarding his book, You Are the Team, Six Simple Ways Teammates Can Go From Good to Great. And in that program, he let it be known that he was coming out with another book. And so I got him to commit to coming back on. And actually that book, which I'll have him talk about, comes out tomorrow. But anyhow, Mike is the president of Teamwork and Leadership, and it's a company that's focused on building better teams and leaders. He's a speaker, he's a trainer, he's a consultant, and he works with hundreds of leaders in building more effective teams. He's got a blog out there that he regularly posts to, and it's regularly in the top 10 of leadership. He's also in Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers. He comes to us today from Utah. And I think you're the one who tells me you have 6 kids and 1 wife, right? That's what you made that point clear. 8 kids?
Children. Yeah,
okay.
8 children.
Okay.
8 children, 1 wife, Southern Utah. Everybody kind of puts it all together, and I always have to reassure them it's 1 wife.
Okay.
So
well,
polygamy is a thing down here, but it's not a thing with me and my family at all.
Well, congratulations. You got a book. You got a book. Another book came out yesterday, right? February 5th.
Yep. February 5th. Yeah.
And that was published through Wiley, I think you had indicated. So.
Yeah, my first book, Year of the Team, was self-published, and this book has been published by Wiley, which has been a great experience.
Oh, so this is going to be kind of different. I would imagine it's going to be available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon, but Wiley gets it out to bookstores starting today, or is it already out, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
At this point, what bookshelves it's hitting, but it's available online everywhere.
Okay.
All the major online retailers, Barnes & Noble, CEO reads, Books A Million, Amazon, it's all there. And if you go to any Barnes & Noble, for example, and you order it, you can order it from there if it's not on the bookshelves yet. Hopefully it will be soon.
Okay. Someone once told me that the largest population in the United States are people that are going to write a book one day. People say, "Oh, I'm going to write a book one day," and they never get around to it. And here you are, you've got not 1 book, but 2 books. What's this new book about?
So the title of the book is Do You Care to Lead? And it's really based off of some research that I saw. There was a Gallup poll that was done not too long ago where 4 out of 10 people strongly agreed with the following statement: my supervisor or someone else at work cares about me. And I thought that was really interesting, because what that means, and a little bit troubling, quite honestly, because that means that 6 out of 10 people don't feel like they're cared about by their supervisor or anyone else at work. And I have been blogging for a number of years, and I focus a lot of my blogging and my writing on servant leadership. And as I was thinking about this Gallup poll that came out, I thought, wow, I mean, there is so much power in leadership where leaders really truly care about the people they lead. And I know that because I saw it in my own corporate life. I was a former director of learning performance in a Fortune 50 company. And so I've been a leader most of my corporate career. And I found that, my leadership resonated with people on a very different level because of my focus on serving those I lead and really caring about them and helping them feel valued.
Well, who's the audience for this book?
The audience is anybody who considers themselves a leader, quite honestly. I mean, there are practical tips for leaders who are leading organizations today or teams, but I'm a big believer. And in fact, if somebody wants to become a leader of an organization or team, then they should start by becoming a leader of themselves and a leader within the relationships and the world in which they belong in. You don't have to lead people. You do need to lead people, but you don't have to lead large organizations or manage people to be a leader. Just by the fact that you're inspiring people to follow you is the definition, my definition anyways, of a leader. And you can do that without a following or without an organization that you lead of, X amount of people. Right. So this is really for anybody who wants to be a leader and really anybody who wants to improve relationships, because this book that's what leadership is based on. It's about relationships, and this book is about improving those relationships through caring about the people that you're in relationships with.
Well, and that's why I was intrigued to have you on the first time, and obviously the second time is I've often said that leadership and good networking go hand in hand. People who are good leaders have good networks, and people who are good at networking tend to be leaders. And when you distill it down, it comes down to relationships. They both have good relationships.
Yeah, it always comes down to relationships, and people who are good team players are
right.
good relationship builders. And if you want to create business, then you have to connect with people, and connecting requires you to build those relationships, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, in the book, it just came out, so I don't have a copy. I will get a copy. But you had indicated there are 5 parts to it. There's a formula to this. If you want to share a little bit about that formula with us.
Yeah, you bet. So it's at the introduction of the book, I talk about the difference between managers and leaders. And this is kind of the basis for jumping off of what I call the SONIC formula, SONIC. And in that introduction, I talk about the fact that managers take their people on subway rides. And if you've ever been on a subway, you know that there's not a lot of smiles. You know that people are going to the same place every single day. Subways are boring. They're uninspiring. And managers that are taking their people on subway rides can get their people from A to B fairly easily because they just tell them what to do. And people do just enough to collect a paycheck. And going from A to B is great, but they never really get their people from A to Z in terms of destinations. So what I like to say is that leaders take their people on rocket rides, because rockets are inspiring. Yes, it takes some time to get people to board the rocket. Right. In other words, to trust you and to take the risks that are associated with the rocket. But rockets are fun. They're inspiring. You're going to new places. You're doing things you've never done before. And ultimately, that's what leadership is about. It's getting people to do things, first of all, that they never thought they could do, but also doing things that they never even thought in the first place about doing. That's what leaders do. And so the SONIC formula starts with the S.
All right, we have an acronym here, is what you're telling me.
Got an acronym.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Thank you. SONIC, SONIC, and that's why it's important. I don't spend a lot of time talking about the rockets and the subways and all that, but that's what I use in the introduction to launch the SONIC formula, if you will.
Yep.
And so S is around service, and I talked quite a bit about this on your last podcast, Frank, that I was on. And so I won't go into detail with that, but the quickest way I know of unlocking leadership, and quite honestly, unlocking any relationship you have, inspiring people to follow you or want to be with you and do things with you, whether that's networking or whether that's leadership, is to serve people. And service is more than just doing your job. It's really connecting with people on a deep level by doing the little and consistent things. And so take a leader, for example. That leader might take their team out to dinner once a year around the holidays. And that is an act of service, but it's these regular, consistent, small acts of service that make the impact in a leader's leadership, as well as a networker's networking. It's these small, regular things. And the way that you get to that point, and I talk a lot about this in the first chapter, or the first chapter of the book, is by regularly thinking about leadership and regularly thinking about service and finding opportunities to regularly serve. In other words, it has to be top of mind. That's really the key around service.
Well, it's a 365-day thing.
Right. Yeah. Simon Sinek, famous leadership author, once said she didn't fall in love with you. He was picking on the guys a little bit, but he said, right, she didn't fall in love with you because you brought her Valentine's Day flowers once a year on Valentine's. She fell in love with you because when you woke up in the morning, instead of checking your phone, you said good morning.
Right.
When you're going down to get something to eat, you asked her if she wanted something to eat.
Right.
When she came home and had a hard day, you didn't, and you had a hard day, you didn't just say, wait, before you tell me about your hard day,
right,
let me tell you about my hard day. You became more interested in her than trying to be interesting. And that's really the key to service, is just consistently, regularly doing these things. And these could be things like, I had an experience one time with a student who told me a story about how a team member on her team, this team was really struggling. She said this team member had been snowing really hard that evening. She went out and scraped and brushed the snow off the cars in the parking lot. I might have shared this on your last podcast, but she went around and scraped and brushed the snow off of each of her teammates' cars. She said her team, it was a night and day difference thereafter because of just that kind of act of service.
Yeah.
That's how you connect with people. That's how you show they care. How you care is through service.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the little things. And I think what we are prone to do, we being humans, is we're prone to, if you ask somebody, are you service oriented? And they'll think to that big thing that they've done and kind of hang their hat on that big thing. Hey, I'm charitable. Look what I did. I gave all this money. But the rest of the time, they're not. And it needs to be kind of a daily, okay, what am I doing today? What am I doing to lift somebody up, help somebody?
It's something that you become a part of. It's something that you regularly think. It is you. Service is you. There's a term for it, I think, anyways, from a leadership perspective that I share in my book called Ubuntu. And
right.
I don't know if your readers have ever heard that term. Did I share that on the first podcast?
We talked about it. I believe you did. And for our listeners, he was on episode 125, which came out on November 21st. So if you want to go back and listen to that, but we did talk. I believe we talked about it.
Good. I'll just summarize it really quick.
Please.
Then. Ubuntu means that I am because we are. That my humanity is caught up and explicably bound up in your humanity. And as a leader, when you look at Ubuntu means you're a leader because other people are following you.
Right.
You're a great leader because other people are being successful, not because you're just this great person. And so when you get this servant's heart, and when you're really truly practicing the philosophy of Ubuntu in your leadership, you realize that I am because we are together. Right. And everything you do is because of others. And so you have an obligation to step up and serve them.
All right. S is for service. O?
O. I love the O. O is
okay.
for opening up. It's about vulnerability. And I remember this is probably my favorite chapter in the book to write. I did not know how this one was going to go, but I was so happy when it was done. I went to my wife. I said, this chapter, this is my favorite chapter to write. And having so much anxiety over it, I was very surprised by the result. But opening up, being vulnerable means as a leader, and this is about serving as well. Everything. Service is foundational, everything I'm going to talk about. But opening up, being vulnerable, like Sarah Blakely I think that's her name. Sarah Blakely is the founder of Spanx.
Yep.
Multi-billion, or I don't know if multi.
She was the first woman billionaire, yeah.
Yeah, and she built this from the ground up. And she tells an interesting story, and I share this in my book, of growing up, and her father would always ask at the table, would ask the children what their failure was that week or that particular day.
Right.
And she said when they didn't fail or they didn't have something to share, he was almost disappointed that they didn't have something to share about their failure. And she said she took this and incorporated it into her company. She calls it oops moments, where she will share and she encourages others to share something that went wrong, some oops moment around the history of the company or around something in the day-to-day lives of these employees. Again, opening up and wanting to share. And what she is doing, in essence, Frank, is creating psychological safety. And there's lots of research that shows that when leaders create psychological safety, and again, we'll go back to relationships, because safety is so critical in all relationships. And
Right.
opening up and being vulnerable is the way that you create that safety. But when you create psychological safety on teams as a leader, you get people who participate in meetings who are more willing to open up, share their opinions, express their opinions, even when they disagree. And of course, your meetings become much more efficient. Everything becomes better as a leader when you create psychological safety. People tend to be more loyal to those types of leaders and teams. They don't want to leave because they don't want to get a leader who doesn't create this type of environment where people feel safe. So opening up and vulnerability, that's the O.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got service, the S for service. O is open up. N?
N is for nurture. And so I like that. N is for nurture.
Give me an N.
Yeah, give me an N. When we traditionally think about managing people, we think about performance managing people. And to me, I've never liked that term. I feel like it has a bad connotation. It's cookie cutter. And I call it cookie cutter leadership. I've worked with leaders in consulting as well as through speaking and other places, where I've found a lot of leaders who like to cookie cutter their management. And cookie cutting simply means that you apply the same type of leadership or the same type of manager, in this case, to everybody. It's the same approach, and that's what performance management does. You can't do that, because if you think, for example, I live here in Utah, as you mentioned, Frank, and I'm at 6,000 feet. We're at a really high elevation. If I took an avocado tree, because I grew up in California, where they're in abundance, I took an avocado tree and tried to plant that here in the mountains of where I live in Utah, it wouldn't have much of a chance to grow.
Right.
But if I took an apple tree and tried to grow that in the desert where I lived in California, that apple tree wouldn't have a good chance of survival of growing either. So what do? Well, we make sure we plant the tree in the right formula, that we provided the right nutrients, the right nurture, the right care. And so that's why I look at nurturing as a critical component of leadership. It's not just performance managing. It's really caring about people. It's about developing people. I categorize employees into 5 categories in my book. And I encourage leaders to proactively identify ways in which they can move people either up, over, or off. And 99% of a leader's time should be spent on moving people up. And those 5 categorizations are superstars. We all love the superstars. Rising stars, which are superstars but just don't have the experience yet. Middle stars or average stars, or what we often call steady eddies. They punch in the clock. They meet expectations, but they never exceed expectations. Falling stars, we know who those folks are. We don't want them, but for some reason, we accept it and we deal with it, and even though we're frustrated. And then this special category that I call deceiving stars. And again, as a leader, you want to make that first move by moving these deceiving stars up. These deceiving stars are superstars in leadership's eyes, but they're pulling the morale of the company down in everybody else's eyes. So, and you've got to nurture every one of these classifications. Proactively, regularly nurture and develop these folks. And so that's the end, that's nurturing.
So essentially you're moving people from one level to the next. That's
right.
I mean, maybe the falling stars are moving out, depending upon if they're willing to get on board or not.
But sometimes the falling stars just need to feel valued, cared about. You just need to take the right steps to give them the right kind of work or whatever it might be to help them shine.
Right.
And there's some cases, where you have to do the tough thing, in a few cases where you'll have to move them over, which means that you don't give somebody else your problem. You're
Right.
very clear on this person, and you're very and you're thinking about this is a really good opportunity for this person. And so you might have to move them over into another seat on the bus, or you might have to move them off. And those are some of the toughest choices we make, as leaders, is to move people off. And I know probably a lot of your listeners have people that they manage or they lead, and I think they would agree. Most leaders do not like to move people off. If you do, you're probably a cookie cutter manager, or you're not a very caring and compassionate leader, because it hurts. It's hard, right?
Yeah,
It's
I'm
hard.
sure. Yeah, no, I mean, nobody wants to do that, but a lot of times it's not what we do, it's how we do it, right? And you're moving people off, and maybe you're moving them off to something that's better, a better fit for them. I worked in public accounting. It wasn't a good fit for me. I'm not a left brain I'm not into the tax code. I did well, but it wasn't the right place for me. And moving out into something that's more creative was liberating for me. So
I just had this conversation. I'm getting ready to do some work with the football team at Southern Utah University. It's going to be a fun project that I'm going to be able to do through their season, hopefully. And in talking to the head coach, we were talking about this very thing, the difficulty when you care about letting somebody go. And I shared an experience I had. It's a fairly vulnerable story. I was laid off from a company about 12 years ago. And I, at the time, I was I was in a senior leadership role over training. And anybody who's worked in business, training is one of the first things to go. And the insurance market had gone soft, which meant that they had to let someone go. And so I was talking to the president of the company, and he told me, he said, "Listen, Mike," he says, "your health food, we know you're good for us, but we're on a fast food diet. So we gotta let you go." Well, at the time, I was thinking to myself, "Holy cow, what am I going to do now?" Right? And it hurts your ego a little bit. But then when I thought about it, I thought those were two of the most miserable years I'd ever had with a company, because I couldn't get the things done that I was hoping to get done. It was like hitting a brick wall every time I wanted to implement something. So I thought, you know what, maybe this isn't a bad thing. And it turned out, to the credit of this company, they allowed me to start doing some leadership and team development with them, which is why I started my blog, which is why I went into team development, which is why I started writing books. I mean, everything that I'm doing now is a result of that layoff. And so what I'm really trying to say is, when one door closes, many times a bigger door will open. And those you're laying off may not see that. But the fact that you as a leader have the courage, and this is what this book is all about, you have the courage to care enough about them to do that, and see long-term that they're really not happy where they are now. And I think my leader saw that, quite honestly. In addition to the health food, fast food analogy, he knew I wasn't probably as happy as I should have been or could have been. Long-term, it was a good thing. So have the courage to do hard thing. And it's oftentimes, if not almost all the time, to be the right thing for that person, for that organization, for that team, for that leader.
Yep. All right. Serve, open up, nurture,
inspire.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And so inspiring is just what it sounds like. And I give a lot of tips and tools that you can use practically every single day, with the teams that you lead or in your relationships, whatever it might be. And this is chock full of them in the inspiring section. Inspiring is about telling people the why, or the what, the why, and the how. That's how I describe it. And if you can get that down, along with a number of other ancillary things that I talk about, in addition to the what, the why, and the how, you can take people to places they've never been before. People are more likely to buy in when they know the what or the where. You can call it the what or the where. But if people know where they're going, that's a big part of your battle as a leader. And a lot of people don't know where they're going. So I always like to use the analogy of being out on a rowboat in this deep, dense, heavy fog. And if you're the leader telling people, this is where we're going, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to, but yet you fail to tell them in full, this is what it looks like, here's the vision,
Right.
then they're going to stop rowing over time. Or you're going to get half the people that will continue to row and half the people that won't. And what happens when that occurs?
Go in circles, yep.
Yeah, go in circles. And so you can tell them the what, but you also have to tell them the why. You tell them this is ultimately why you're doing what you do, because people are inspired by the why. We're inspired when we sell, for example. When we're selling something to somebody, we have to tell them the why. We have to say, this is why this is going to change your life, right? And then the how, which is goal setting and all those things. And I've got a lot of cool stuff around goal setting in there too.
Okay.
But inspiring is too is about complimenting. It's about telling stories. There's a lot of other stuff in the book.
Yeah, we don't want to give the book away. You got to buy the book. Get on Amazon, order a copy. All right. Serve, open up, nurture, inspire. The C in Sonic. What do we got?
Commit.
Okay.
So this I could have put at the first of the book or the end. I chose to put it at the end, plus it fits with the acronym better.
I was going to say, it works better that way.
But I think it's a good way to end. And commitment is about your personal commitment to the people that you lead, to your team, your organization. I talk about in the book, You Are the Team, which we talked about in the first podcast.
Yeah.
It starts with you. It always starts with you. Your personal commitment starts with you. And you also have to be focused on your commitment to your own personal development as well. If you're not spending time reading, it's like the shoemaker. The shoemaker makes shoes for everybody except himself, right?
Right.
As a leader, development is important, but you have to commit to that development. I actually conclude with kind of a funny story about a chicken and a pig who were taking a walk. And the chicken had mentioned to the pig that it would be a great idea if they opened up a restaurant. And some of your listeners who are technical might get this because it's part of a process or a philosophy somewhere in IT. But the chicken says, let's start a restaurant. The pig says, that's a great idea. What should we serve? And the chicken says, ham and eggs, of course.
Right.
And the pig says, well, that's great, Mr. Chicken. You're making a contribution, but I'm making like a complete commitment here.
Yeah.
So, and I'm encouraging people to make that commitment, to go full in on this, to give your blood, sweat, and tears to those you lead, because they deserve that. They deserve what you can give them in terms of your effort. Your calling as a leader is a sacred calling. And I say that several times in the book. It is a sacred calling. You have a sacred responsibility. You are affecting and changing literally the people's lives who you lead. They're spending a good portion of their life with you. And so you owe it to them if you're going to step up and be a leader. And if you don't care about people, you shouldn't lead. That's my thought anyways.
Right.
But you're going to spend a good portion, they're going to spend a good portion of their life with you. Make sure you do them the justice they deserve.
Well, I'm fond of saying that the people who follow you will never do more than you do. They just won't. So if you're a leader, you need to, in your terms, step up. You need to commit, because if you don't put in the hard work, they're not going to either.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to raise the bar, and hopefully you can inspire each one of them to raise the bar as well, which in turn will raise the bar of everyone around them too. I mean, raising the bar is a contagious activity.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you? We're running short on time here.
Yep. You can get a hold of me at michaelgrogers.com. That's my website. Michael G, as in Gary, Glenn, Garth.
Right.
I won't tell you what my middle name is, but it's one of those three.
Yeah.
So michaelgrogers.com. And I will have information on there as well. If you order the book, there's a number of bonuses you can get with the book. So you can look forward to that too. And I have contact information on that site as well. That's my main site. So you can get to my blog from there. You can get to my books and products from there. You can get to how I can come speak at your organization from there. It's all there.
Okay, great. Michael Rogers, author of You Are the Team, and also Do You Care to Lead, which came out yesterday. So get on Amazon and order it. Thank you for being on again.
Thanks, Frank. It's my pleasure, and always great to spend a little bit of time with you.
Well, I'm ordering the book. I'll go through it. I'll probably have you on a third time. We'll talk about various aspects in it and really take a deeper dive on certain things. So thank you.
Sounds great.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.